When it comes to my opinion of sports journalists, there are very few that I would put below them when it comes to credibility, okay? Like, but games journalists, probably, specifically if you want to peel them off a little bit, wrestling journalists underneath them, but sports talk commentators, sports journalists, they're pretty bad. They're really bad. But we have notable exceptions, okay? You can't paint with completely broad strokes without having a couple of exceptions. And Jason Whitlock, for as many goofy opinions as he has on other cultural issues, when it comes to breaking down sports, there are very few people that are better. And to completely and totally contrast that, you have Stephen A. Smith. And now these two, who have had a long, sordid history of them passing each other, working at different outlets throughout the night, one continuing to find work and the other one, well, just sucking up to a dying industry in order to, make ends meet. Whenever they have a dust up, it's kind of worthy of coverage. So you have Jason Whitlock branding Stephen A. Smith a neat wrangler, the scholar wrangler. Oh, and a plant for the DNC. Oh, okay. As he reignites his bitter feud with the ESPN host while promising to apologize on air if he proves his memoir stories, the dude lies about everything. Yeah, and again, that's another reason for the downfall of the sports journalist. Them, instead of covering the story, making the story about them, and nobody's more guilty of that than Stephen A. Smith. Jason Whitlock has reignited a bitter feud with Stephen A. Smith after branding the ESPN host a basketball American wrangler and claiming that he has planted in television to push a political agenda. Well, if you listen to any of his commentary, I don't think he's necessarily a plant, and he's given his lines. I just think that he wholeheartedly agrees with the nonsense that he says and just is simply taking advantage of the situation. Whitlock and Smith have been locked in a furious dispute over the past months over the former penned a column accusing his ex-colleague of lying in his recently released memoir. Smith responded with a foul-mouthed tirade directed at Whitlock, whom he likened to a devil, a bitch, a fat piece of shit, and worse than a white supremacist. Oh my god, coming from an extreme lefty, what's worse than a white supremacist? An orange supremacist. Dun dun dun! He then discussed their fallout during an appearance on Howard Stern. Yeah, birds of a woke feather do in fact flock together, and I guess they probably also share hair care tips. In his show this week, admitting that he even warned his pastor about the expletive rant he was about to unleash on him. Oh my god. Now Whitlock has fired back at Smith in his latest episode of the Fearless podcast, which is hosted on Blaze TV. Cringe as that is, but hey man, that's totally fine. In which he described him as I'm running out of synonyms, wrangler, there we go, and a plant for the Democratic Party. Oh my god. Stephen A's whole job as a plant, I've already explained that already. He's a DNC voter wrangler, the 56-year-old said. He's an overseer. He's there trying to reinforce to the black man, follow me, follow my lead, follow the Democratic Party's talking points. Again, if you listen to the guy talk, he's not wrong. He might be crass, but he's not wrong. The major concern about what's going to happen with the black vote, the whole Democratic Party, alphabet mafia families, the whole thing is dependent on the black vote and the black matriarchy and making sure everybody's good with that. Like I said, man, okay, for as much as I detest sports journalists, the exceptions are pretty good. And Stephen A. Smith is there trying to convince the average black man, hey, this is a good thing. Go along and get along. Whitlock also doubled down on his claim that Smith is lying about a number of stories in his memoir. Yeah, let's get to this. Most notably, his days as a basketball player at Winston-Salem State College. Stephen A. Smith isn't that tall, so I'd be very interested to know how good he claims he was at basketball. Also hitting out at Stern for telling Smith that he doesn't know who he is. Like, come on, like Jason Whitlock's one of the, preeminent voices in sports media. If you even have a passing knowledge, you've probably heard of the guy before. Controversial conservative commentator said, "Stop it, Howard. You almost made Stephen A. Smith sound a tiny bit honest, but that can't be done." It's now the third time he's talked about me after saying, "I'll never mention him again. I'll never talk about him again." Well, you're talking about me again, Stephen A. when you went on your little childish tirade, cursing tirade, and never answering any of the legitimate questions that I raised. You said that you'd never talk about me, and then you turned around the next day and said you thought I was done talking about him. And now you're on Howard Stern's show talking about me again. Yes, that's pretty petty. This is pretty hilarious. Like, okay, for as many people I can go around and say, well, Whitlock, you're doing the exact same thing. But if you got Stephen A. Smith out there, can't keep this guy's name out his mouth, it's got to be a funny situation. Stephen A., a little cliche joke about, how do you know that someone's lying? Their lips are moving. It was written for Stephen A. Smith. Oh, no. At one point, Stephen A. starts rattling off, ask this person, ask that person. Always a sign of an honest actor. About his book. Why I gotta ask all these different people? Why can't I ask you? Why can't you answer the question? Why can't you explain why you would be on ESPN television saying I played one game that you would 6 or 7 months later go onto your podcast and say that I've never played in a game? Oh, why is the stat sheets list a Stephen Smith playing 9 or 10 games? Why can't you answer that question? Why do I need to go and ask your sister, your teammates, or your friends? And that seems like a really simple answer for you to give. Well, yeah, exactly. Even when you did go back into college, when everything was written down on tablets, you should have some kind of record of that. It should be pretty easy to pull up. He then added, just provide a few receipts, and that goes a long way. And you shut me up. I have to come on air and apologize, because I would. This thing can be over within an instance. You could put a sword through my entire story or all of my questions very easily. Why won't you? And people keep asking, well, why is this important? So what, he exaggerates, because the dude lies about everything, or appears to. Virtually every story is just incredible. But Whitlock wasn't done, okay? While most of his ire was focused on Stephen A. Smith, he got time. He got time today, cuz Whitlock hits out at Shannon Sharpe for the ghetto shtick he used to get to the top of the profession. Well, yeah, because if you listen to some of the very interesting interviews that, well, as an athlete, which normally I wouldn't say to search out any sort of athlete interviews, but Shannon Sharpe, he's definitely a smart guy. He's definitely articulate, and a lot more so than what he's leading on with, especially during his Club Shay Shay podcast. Like, come on, man. He used to get to the top of the profession as he lists the top 30 media beefs, including Pat McAfee, Hack, Dave Portnoy, Super Hack, after reigniting his feud with Stephen A. Smith. Well, you know, talk your shit. Talk your shit, big man. Whitlock listed his top 30 feuds with members of the media after he claimed a nemesis Stephen A. Smith has tried to frame him as being at war with black sports media community. Well, most of them suck, if we're going to be completely honest. Whitlock and Smith have been locked in a furious dispute over the past month after the former penned a column accusing his ex-colleague of lying. In his recently released memoir, Smith claimed that every black member of the industry had called him to thank him for hitting back at Whitlock during the appearance on Howard Stern's radio show. Everyone, Stephen? Come on now. Whitlock claimed his Fearless podcast Thursday that Smith wasn't unique and that he had beef with the mainstream media in general. Stephen A. and the internet, and a lot of these talkers want to pretend that Jason Whitlock, he just blasts off and all these black media people, and that he's got a war and a feud with the black media, he said, beginning his lengthy rant. And oh boy, well, he's got a list. He's got time today. He's going to name every single one of them. Some of them I like. Some of them are all right. A lot of them are insufferable, but okay, it's a pretty good start. What I want to show you is, because I had them put together a big graphic of all the different people in the media I had beef with, because we've heard Stephen A. Smith. Every black member of the media has called me and said, thank you for ripping Jason Whitlock. You know what? Maybe it's true. Maybe, but it's not in any way, shape, or form a reflection of me singling out black people in the media for criticism. The host then brought up a graphic of 30 members of the media who he has feuded with in the past, adding that the total could easily be increased to 40 or 50. Yeah, he's kind of jumped around, Jason Whitlock this is, to just about every single outlet that would have him, and well, he's a prickly fellow. Definitely. Among Whitlock's targets were Pat McAfee, Mina Kimes, Dave Portnoy, but went on to detail the root of the beef with Shannon Sharpe, who features on Smith's First Take show, or First Take, sorry, following his split from Skip Bayless and Undisputed last year. Oh, that fell apart then? Oh, interesting. Okay. I don't really hate Shannon Sharpe. I just don't like the game he played to get to the top of the profession. I called it out. Oh, and I called him out on it. The do-rag, the liquor, the weed, the ghetto shtick. I called him out on it. I see what you're doing. Everyone needs to understand. That's what you have to do to reach the top. We already went over, Stephen A. beef when it comes to that stuff. I just want to go ahead and get to, the other people in question, because I think that is far more interesting. But I guess it doesn't elucidate here, but I would just, out of pure curiosity, I'd like to see what he has to say about Dave Portnoy, because they both kind of occupy the same outsider perspective of having, a pretty decent grasp on the sports landscape while being perceived as a pariah by the mass media. And of course, Pat McAfee, I think that he is absolutely the bottom of the barrel when it comes to sports commentary, even though he is hyper popular, but it'll have to be something for another time, because Stephen A. Smith got properly cooked. Not in his trademark bombastic fashion, but with just simple logic and reason. Hey, you can go ahead and claim all this stuff. Simple receipts would go a long way. It's just, hey, point me in the right direction. Even though I'm a fat piece of shit like you like to proclaim on the Howard Stern show, I sure as hell can waddle my engorged ass over there to a stat sheet to read them out if you got them, but it doesn't look like it. And as Shannon Sharpe would do is smoke them if you got them, but in this point in time, that pack is certainly empty. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.